Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Dan Chavez Jr. So, we just had Ronald Arejo on with us, who is a council candidate for District 3. Our next guest, she is definitely no stranger to hard work. Born in Mexicali and raised in the San Joaquin Valley, she is a migrant worker and later moved to the city of Oxnard in 1988. A mother of four and a fighter for families that led her to find and create the Family First Project of Ventura County. She is also a former Oxnard Homeless Commissioner and a strong supporter for local labor union groups. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Lucy Cartagena, council candidate for District 4. Hi, Lucy. How are you?
I'm good for having me, Daniel.
Thank you for accepting the invitation and being part of this conversation. And thank you for running um, for city council. You know, you served, like I read, you served on the homeless commission for a number of years. And now it's time to take that next step, right?
Yeah, and everybody should. I encourage anybody and everybody to sit on one of the community committees. That it's very easy. You only have to be 18 years old and just pick one. Pick something that is true to your heart, and that way you can do the labor of love for the community and make that change because then you will be in that same where you want to take that very next step and take the reins.
I completely agree with that. And I did take that to heart when you told me a couple of years ago, and now I sit on the planning commission, which has been very rewarding and very interesting. You learn more about the city, so that's always a great step forward. So let's get right into it because I know you're very pressed for time. You got your forum tonight with the League of Women Voters, which is always a great forum, moderated by David Murrin. So, what motivated you to take that next step and run for city council?
I think the anger, the frustration of seeing our incumbents there for over a decade and still nothing changed. I know that we want to blame everything on the past and past council members, but eventually we have to take responsibility for what is happening now. So we're at the here and the now, and there's still nothing, and we're in a worse position than supposedly we were for the past people that did these transgressions to our city. So it kind of makes you wonder what exactly is happening and not happening, and how the heck could they close so many services needed for the community when we're already a low income community. So that's what motivated me. That's it.
So, let me ask you because you've been part of the city for a number of years. Like I read in your bio, since 1988, you moved to the city from the San Joaquin Valley. What are your three priorities moving forward? Because you served our city on the Citizens Advisory Group as a homeless commissioner. Now you're running for city council. What are those three priorities for you? And again, you know as well as I know, we can name over 100 different ones, but I just want to focus on three that you really want to hit the ground running when you get elected to office.
Homeless, homelessness. I think that we were so pacified as a homeless commissioner. As you know, you sit on a CAG. They have no power. So that's like one of the one things I want to structure. It's like, why have a citizen advisory group that cannot make a recommendation that is taken serious, especially when the citizens advisory groups are the checks and balance of the city. So they are the ones that do the hard work. They are the ones that research when something comes from the city to the community advisory group. They do the research, they check it, and then they send a recommendation to the city. So what good is it when the city council members vote unanimously against the can? So that's my number one, homelessness. Number two is the aesthetics of the city in economic development. Our aesthetics are deplorable. We're not in the San Joaquin Valley. We are not in a red state run by other leaders that are siphoning money for other reasons. We're in a blue county and we have blue overseers, but yet our cities, our streets, our medians are overpaved. passes are disgusting. And you can go by any park and you can see it. So aesthetics is another one. And then it's the social equality. I don't think Oxnard has the social equality that we need. So that's them.
Um, touching on one of your priorities, because you already mentioned that you were a homeless commissioner before, and you felt that there was no communication, or that the CAGs weren't being taken serious. If you are one of those members that get elected this November and you're sitting representing District 4, what are your approach going to be towards the CAGs? Are you going to take their advice a little bit more serious? Are you going to try to speak to your fellow council members so they, because again, it's not just one council member, you need four of them in order to get anything passed. So what is your approach when you're going to be dealing with the homeless that has been on Oxnard's mind for years?
I think the number one thing is, and it's a simple thing, which I've not seen any council member do, is just ask to sustain the issue till they get more information. I don't see what is so hard for any council member to hold something. I just don't understand why it's so hard that they feel they're at the 11th hour that the city brings them something that needs to be passed that day. I think that in itself needs to change because the city always presents the commissions and the city council something that has to be passed on the 11th hour. That automatic should automatically be able to take pay cuts out of whoever that city employee was that is not diligent enough to make sure that the city gets information in ample time.
So let me ask you, because that might tie into, as you know, Oxnard has 5 measures on the ballot this year. One of them being proposed, being a proponent for the city of Oxnard is a proponent of Measure E, and Measure F, L, M, and N are proponents as a candidate from District 3. And I want to focus on Measure E, which is the 1.5% local sales tax for city services. Now, you have been a very strong voice in the community for a number of years, and you've always expressed your um, frustration towards certain decisions that council has made and even staff's recommendation. What is your position on Measure E? Do you believe that it should be passed, or do you oppose Measure E?
Well, first, thank you for wording that very nicely. You and I both know I'm extremely passionate on it. Now, Measure E, that scares me. It makes me look towards Measure O and how the city abused that money and used it for general fund. And that was really made for gangs and prevention of gangs. So that's extremely disheartening for one. And then we have Measure E, which is extremely ambiguous. It says for one thing, but it could be used for another. And then it has no end date. So that itself scares me too. It's like, so this is never ending, what, a slush fund? It's too big. It needs to be direct and it needs to be something concrete that we can look towards. Even though Measure O was made as concrete as possible for youth, for gang prevention, it was never utilized the way it was meant for. So now we have a new Measure E that may be bringing in $40 million. And that's extremely scary. One, yes, the city needs it. Two, how does the city get that bad? And three, what is the city's plan B? Is this our Hail Mary? So that's why I'm not a supporter of Measure E, but I am supporting that we do need it. So does that make sense? I don't know. Luckily, it's not up to me to decide. And I am so glad I didn't sit up there and have to make that choice because that is a horrible place to be put in. Now, the other ones, the Measure L, M, F, and N, um, I support some and then I don't support others, but I do really think at the end, the voters need to be very, very versed. It's your tax dollars. At the end of the day, my personal opinion is my personal opinion. Voters, be diligent, do your work, find out, and see who supports both measures. At the end of the day, follow the money. Follow the money trail. Who's dumping in money for what and what purpose?
So let me ask you, because you did bring up Measure O, and this year, Measure O is not technically on the ballot, but it is mentioned in Measure N. Measure N talks about that certain road conditions need to be met. Otherwise, Measure O, which was approved by the voters back in 2008, can sunset a lot sooner. But if the city does meet those certain standards for road conditions, it could be extended in increments of 5 years. Now, just for clarification to the viewers, Measure O is a general tax, sales tax, which is allowed to go to any services. Now, whatever scheme or um, public, trying to reach out to the public it goes, that's one thing or another. But if you all recall, on Monday for a special edition of Oxnard Live, we had Mr. Aaron Starr and we read the actual ballot text that says that it would go to any services from youth to public safety to infrastructure and so forth. So that's just that little snippet. And I'm sorry, Lucy, but let me ask you, Measure N, do you believe it's appropriate? Because mind you, and I'll bring your attention back to just a budget or two ago, where fire station number 2, engine 62, was going to be removed from South Oxnard. That Measure O went and saved fire station number 8, which is next to Oxnard College, which is also funded by Measure O funds. Do you believe it's appropriate that Measure N is ultimately saying, hey, you need to fix the streets, and it's okay if you don't fund public safety or other services that Measure O has been going towards?
Yes, sad as it sounds, yes, I do support it. Only because our streets are terrible. There is not one alley that you can go through in Oxnard does not have pothole city. There's people that come to me all the time that try to sue the city because their axle falls out. Oxnard is full of potholes. So Measure M, even though it is extremely vague, should not go to things that should already be paid by the city. They get 65% of the general fund. So taking still away from a measure is not fair. It's not fair on the community, it's not fair on the city, and it's not fair on the roadways. So maybe the city needs to start looking at taxing a little higher the businesses that are supposed to be giving for roads. When a business comes into Oxnard, they're supposed to give a certain amount to be able to bring those trucks and streets. So if the city is not charging enough or going back and revisiting something as easy as facts in Oxnard, and now we have color pop. Kylie Jenner makes over, what is it, something $1 billion a year, and her plant is located here in Oxnard. So as they ship out, even though it says it's being shipped out from Malibu or whatever it's being shipped out from, she was just here a couple of days ago surfing in our beach. But yet I guarantee she's not taxed the same. So that's almost like where you start talking about Proposition 15, where big people are not taxed the same as the little people. So why does the little people have to pay for things and services that should have already been implemented by bigger corporations? We have huge corporations here that should be taking care of that grunt.
So let me ask you this, and this was a question that I asked the proponent of Measure N, was what do you say to those people that stood in those council chambers fighting to keep Fire Station 2, the Engine 62, in South Oxnard and other services such as the PAC, the La Colonia Boxing Gym, the library? What do you say to those? Because Measure O did go to fund those. If we pass Measure N, all of those services go away. And now, lack of better words, what do you say to them?
Well, I was one of those people. I was one of them, but it wasn't to take out money from Measure M. That was never the intention. So I don't have to say anything to them because that's not what we went to fight. We didn't go over there and fight and say, hey, take out our gang prevention money and let's throw it into a fire station. That was never the intention. The intention was is the city needs to come up with those monies to keep these services open. Period. That's it. So we don't have to say we need measure O or measure N for this or that. We just need for the measures to do what they're made to do. That's it. And if we lose measure N and if we lose measure O money, then shame on the city. That's something. What would I say to the people? Keep your city council members accountable because they were sleeping on the job. That's what I say to them.
So, okay, so since you are supporting Measure N, which ties into Measure O, and you oppose Measure E, which is the city's 1.5% sales tax increase, how do you propose that we pay for services? We, our city, including other cities across the nation, have been rocked by COVID-19. We saw that. We saw multiple cities digging into the reserves. As you know as well as I do, the city of Oxnard already had a very low reserve bank account. How do we pay for services moving forward?
Well, we know monies are trickling down for COVID into the city. We know that. We know that there will be money going to every city for COVID relief. We know that there will be money retrailing back for COVID for homelessness. So we already know. I think the number one thing is educate the community. The one thing that Oxnard lacks is community camaraderie. You never see the community in the know-how of the city. Why the city seems to think that it's some sort of secret Mason society, I don't know. I think the number one thing is what I have seen is Oxnardians step up to bat. When our parks were bad and the trash was everywhere, Oxnardians stepped up to clean. Oxnardians stepped up to trim. Oxnardians stepped up. So what would I do? I'd reach out to my people and make it Oxnard strong. That's what I would do. We're already strong. We're just not in the loop. So bring them in the loop. If there is cuts and clashes or whatever, then we will overcome together, not with the city being vague and not with the city not being transparent. The fear factor needs to stop. Stop scaring us by telling us and threatening us, we're going to close Bologna Boxing Gym. That is like a song and it's a broken record. Tell us what we can do together to make sure that doesn't happen. That's it. We came up for Thomas Fire, we come up for anything. So to turn around and feel that our community is too naive or unsure or how to do something is a disservice to the voters. So what will we do? We'll do it together, whatever it takes. That I do know.
So let me ask you, Lucy, in the midst of COVID-19, we are seeing more and more families get pushed out onto the streets because they don't have jobs, they're unable to pay their utilities or their rent. Yes, there is a rent control order that was came down from the state. City council end up backing that. Also, moving forward after COVID, what are your plans for housing and and jobs coming into the city of Oxnard? And not just any job. I don't want a McDonald's job, but I want those well-paying jobs that are not just paying the high salaries, but are also providing the benefits to their employees. What are your plans? So it's a two-part for housing and, and as well as having those job market come in for our residents.
Well, I think the part, so you're looking at jobs that are high paying, which require higher skills and higher education, because you just cannot live at a lower impoverished area, have lower education, and then expect to get a $50 an hour job. That's just not going to happen. So what do we need? We need six parts to your two parts. The six part consists of school, education, and then trade. We need trades. We need other services that can get that child into that skill. We need it. The city does not work with the schools as well. We need to really tie into the schools so we can make our children college bound for one. That helps your one part. The second part is yes, it's low income. I've been witnessing Oxnard turn into the gentrification. So if people are out of houses and everything, it's because the city continues to allow high, high, high housing. They look at the river park. There is nobody that in Oxnard that could really afford that without sticking 6 families in there. So we have a lot of issues in that two part. We have to dissect it, break it down. But I think the number one thing we can do with everything is prevention and education. That's the number one.
So let me ask you, Lucy, another measure on Oxnard's ballot is Measure L, which is increasing the city treasurer's powers. It takes an elected position, the city treasurer, and merges it with an appointed, a higher position that requires experience. The CFO, the chief financial officer, and merges it into one and becomes one new elected position, ultimately the city treasurer. What are your feelings on the city treasurer position and Measure L?
That was a scary one, because that means anybody can be elected in there and not have the experience to do it. So I guess for that one, that I do want to be able to have an elected official because the community elected him for a reason. But I mean, some of them could show you our city clerk right now is running against nobody. So she's automatically going to get it. So again, that's a kind of scary one. That one I'm on the fence of.
Okay. So let me ask you about, because anything that runs in our city, whether it's a person trying to renovate their home, a business trying to come in, another measure is Measure F, which is permits of the city or expedite permitting. That only really affects the building aspect. It doesn't even talk about the planning aspect that so many people have had issues with, is the planning component, not necessarily the building. Where do you stand on that? Because this measure is talking about you can get a permit, your building permit in a day. All you need to do is have a peer review. And if we go back in a couple of incidents, in Florida State, their bridge collapsed, and that was a peer review. The Boeing 737 MAX was a self-certification peer review, and it killed over 300 people. Where do you stand on Measure F, that is the expedite permitting?
That one I have to tell you, I'm extremely on the fence too, because it means right now we're allowing the ADUs allow for changing of ADUs so there can be grandma flat. So even though somebody may just want to be converting their garage, I think they should be able to just convert their garage to a granny flat. So even though a huge bridge collapsed somewhere and the Boeing happened, I think we just have to be smart about what we allow on that. So everything can have a regulation. So that's something that if we can pass the quicker micro homes, quicker ADUs, quicker things that people can build their garage, somebody can upgrade a patio. So simple things like that, they should be allowed to be expedited, because there is no reason that somebody is waiting to fix your garage for 2 years. And that happens in Oxnard. So that one, I'm sorry, I just think the city needs to really work on the regulations on that and let the people fix their garage or their patio. That should not take 2 years to do something like that.
So Lucy, you've been an advocate, you've been with a lot of local organizations throughout the city. And one is trying to, how do you move our city forward in order to promote a safe, healthy, and environmentally responsible city?
I think the first thing to do, and I've been asking the city for over 5 years, is to implement a nonprofit hub in the city. That would be number one. Simi Valley just put one in. Every city but the city of Oxnard has a nonprofit hub. A nonprofit hub will be able to provide resources and services. Then we can utilize them. So something as simple, like not everything has to be rocket scientist and not everything has to cost $6 million. Some things are just as simple as they sound. And the bad thing about our city is not progressive. And the worser thing is that whoever works in our city that makes all that wonderful money gets to go back to the city they live in that has everything implemented at Oxnard lab.
So, okay, District 4 which is the central part of the city of Oxnard, and it engulfs the downtown Oxnard. It's everything south of Second Street. Just, and I should know this because this is my district, but it goes as far as Oxnard Boulevard and goes as far as Ventura Boulevard, encompassing Marina West, and it goes as south as Channel Islands. There we go. I remember. Um, what are your plans for the downtown Oxnard? As you recall, a few years ago, there was a charrette to try to figure out how to revitalize downtown Oxnard, and a plan ultimately was created, and the city council was to be making decisions on that plan. How would you, by being on the city council, work to continue to revitalize downtown, but also protecting the businesses that are currently there?
Well, I think the charade, I know it's called a charrette, but it was really a charade that made us think that something was going to happen. And the $8 million that was put into it and the city took out for the general fund out of it, it was almost like it really was a charade. It made us think something was going to happen, put money aside just to be used for something else again. The same thing that Oxnard Forever does, take from Peter to pay Paul. So I think that's something that could be revisited, but done right. For some reason, we kept losing our economic developer, and it just trickled one thing after another. So I guess that's one thing you really want to see. Who's going to be working on it? How are they going to be working on it? And when they're going to be working on it? Because that was over 5 years ago. And here we are today. So that's a shame.
Yeah, and I would just make mention that the downtown management, Abel Magana, had shared with me that there's actually six different plans for downtown Oxnard. So it is a long time coming, and hopefully, whoever gets into that seat, and this kind of applies for all council members, that they really try to focus on downtown. And there are some improvements coming. It's just not moving at the pace that we want to see them, unfortunately. So, Lucy, again, I made mention about your passion uh, when it comes to the city council and the decisions that they make. And you ultimately would be one of seven members on that council. You would be ultimately the boss of the city manager as well as the city attorney. What would be your approach to working with the fellow council members as well as the two employees that you directly hire?
I think my approach would be luckily we do training once you become a city manager, city council member. So maybe they'd help on my vocal and then maybe they train a little bit better. But I think most everybody sitting there I've known for decades. So there's nobody I don't know and they don't know me personally. So that's a great thing already. We already have a lot in common. I think the end we all have the same common ground is the betterment of Oxnard, regardless what their agenda is in their future. The betterment of Oxnard is still everybody's agenda. And the great thing is that I bring to the council is that I already work with massive organizations and I already work on homeless issues. So I already have an upper hand working in the homeless issues in a different capacity.
So let me ask you, you kind of already touched on it a little bit, that Oxnard Strong. And you mentioned the Thomas Fire, how the community came together. And you mentioned most recently what is happening throughout the city where everyday residents are coming together and trimming trees, bushes in the medians, picking up trash, doing everything to do their part to keep their community clean and safe. How else can you build community involvement, because these are, it's not, mind you, we have over 207,000 residents in the city. How do you build that community involvement to try to bring more people not only to come and volunteer but also be involved in their local government so that they are keeping their officials accountable?
I think I would make it friendly. Oxnard is not friendly. As much as we want to say the city that cares, people do care. but our city does not. So that's what I would want to change. Neighborhood camaraderie is key. Neighborhood camaraderie is key to public safety. Neighborhood camaraderie is key to keeping the aesthetics of your neighborhood clean. I mean, just building those neighborhood councils that have been lax for way too long is a shame. And the information highway does not assimilate through Oxnard the way it should be. So I think that's what I would work on. I would want to see our INCO work in a capacity that it has never worked on before. And I would want to see those can be able to get an allotment of money so they can do the work that they need to do in the community. That is number one. It's like if we spend money on buying a brand new generator for the fire department, we can spend money on our neighborhood councils. That sometimes we just have to be a little bit smarter on how and where we spend.
Now, you and other candidates have all talked about goals and priorities that you guys want to see happen. Now, a lot of times the city just doesn't have enough money to go around to everybody. So how do you prioritize a generator for a fire department versus going towards a neighborhood council?
I think that's the difference between me and the other council members running is they don't implement. I'm an implementer. I'm a doer. I'm boots on the ground and I don't talk about it or have a pipe dream about it. I make it happen. So if I see a lack, I'll take advantage of it. And we could take South Oxnard, for instance, where I reached out to the housing director to get that empty lot. And now they're putting in a pocket park. I'm doing the same in downtown Oxnard on 6th and C. It's an empty vacant lot and we will be putting in a sensory garden. So I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to do about it. So that's the difference. What I do on my spare time, I can do in a huge capacity. Imagine what I do now just to do because I'm a community leader and involver. What can I do as a council member for our community in a bigger capacity? That's what I'll do. I won't talk about it. I'll be about it. Even if come November, after November, what? I'll still be there.
That sounds great, Lucy. Now, again, this kind of goes back to the priority game question about how there is over 100 ones that we can pick from. But I want to know, what do you believe is Oxnard's biggest challenge? And if elected, how would you accomplish of correcting that challenge?
I think the number one with Oxnard is going to go back to my number one priority, homelessness, because homelessness encompasses drug addiction, mental health, it encompasses domestic violence, the youth, LGBTQ. I mean, if we can take a reign of homelessness and change different forms of ADUs, micro living, tent city, container homes. I mean, we can really make an impact. It won't make a big change, but we can start there. And I really think that's where the investment should be because prevention and education on homeless, because every day, like you said, even COVID made people homeless. And every day, paycheck to paycheck is going to make somebody else homeless. So unless we start looking at what we can do instead of looking at the big picture, let's take it apart little by little by little and let's start fixing that. And that's how I think. And again, I go back to a nonprofit hub because a nonprofit hub would bring in resources and services to prevent homelessness or to be able to help. So unless we implement all these different moving parts, we can still keep complaining about it and it just looks overwhelming. But it's really not overwhelming. It's just let's start somewhere.
I want to touch on the last measure, and that's measure M, which is city meeting procedural rules. That this measure is talking about that committee meetings should not occur before 5 p.m., that it allows the city, if they wanted to have weekend meetings that can start at 9 a.m. Now, you know as well as I know that most recently with the new city manager that we end up having a sunshine ordinance go into place that has a 12-day in advance of all the agenda, the staff reports before the actual council meeting, 7 days before a council committee meeting, as opposed to what it originally was that the city was only applying to the Brown Act that only requires of 72 hours before a council meeting and a 24 hours before a special meeting. What is your position on Measure M? Do you think it's appropriate, or do you believe that the city is doing the right job now by having staff be there to give the presentations, answer questions when it comes up from the public? Or do you believe this approach that they need to record their presentations, and residents are responsible to go and find the videos later on and review them?
Is again one I don't know, because I've been at places where I never made a meeting because it was too early. Or like they have the budget and finance meeting at 9 o'clock. You never get to participate. So I don't know. I don't know. I like to be at the housing one. I like to be at the budget and finance, but they're at 9 o'clock in the morning and I'll never be able to attend. So that makes it so a lot of community leaders can't be there. And that's important, especially if we're trying to have the community get more involved. They're working. So are we supposed to become a non-working community so that we can make a budget and finance meeting? I think maybe the city needs to look at what key meetings should be at night so that the community could participate. So maybe that would him putting this could move the city to find a common ground, because I want to go to budget and finance and I want to go to housing one. And some of those meetings are super important. How do we get the community to get involved if they can never get involved?
Now, I want to touch on, we're going to go back to the homeless, not only because you are a homeless commissioner, but because you have ultimately dedicated a good portion of your public figure career with dealing with the homeless. Now, homeless is not just a city by city or a community by community issue, it's actually a regional issue. How would you work with the other local governments, such as Pauanini, Ventura, and the county, to try to address this issue or this challenge of homelessness?
I think that would happen. I don't think nobody knows, but Port Hueneme has no type of homeless commission or no type of homeless committee. I think that's what I would want implemented first. I really think we need to just reach across and make that happen, especially since we butt up to it. So when we had Helico, that was right between Hueneme and Oxnard, even though it was in the city of Oxnard. So why the city of Hueneme not having any type of homeless service, period, and they just shift everything to Oxnard, it's not fair. So that I think that would be it. Even though we work with the continuum of care in Ventura County and our pot of money goes there, the continuum of care is not looking towards Oxnard. The continuum of care right now has where the city of Ventura has over 4 one-stop programs, and Oxnard, being the biggest city, has one. So things like that have to change, like right away, off the bat. When you talk about real time and immediate action, those are what I want to see, immediate action, because that's ridiculous. And those are so easy problem solved. Those are some of the things that I say do not cost money. They just cost common sense.
Thank you, Lucy. And again, I want to respect your time because I know you have a forum tonight. So I will allow you to say your final words. Anything else that you want the public to know about you, your candidacy, your campaign, or this is your time, your opportunity. So consider this your closing statement as we wrap up our conversation tonight.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you, Daniel. I'm really glad he didn't run because I didn't want to run against him. I love Daniel. I'm looking forward to when he does run, and I hope you guys all support him. He's a great moderator. I don't even know if I could do all that. But again, my name is Lucy Cartagena. I am running for District 4, the city of Oxnard. We encompass the downtown area. And my passion is homelessness. My passion is to do. I am boots on the ground. I don't talk about it. I am about it. And I just want you guys to really be informed and really look at your whoever is running and look at that individual and see what they have done, haven't done, if they're talking about it, if they are about it. That is the number one thing. It's like, what are they doing? What are they not doing? And what are they going to do? Because we all have to remember after November, what? People come, they run, and they disappear. So after November, what? Hold those people accountable. Because I guarantee after November, you'll still see me out there cutting trees, doing whatever I do, doing the reading the parks. I'm not done. Regardless if I run or don't run, I'm still going to run my city, either as a council member or as a community leader. And that's what I want you to put to the fire, those running that you may like for whatever reason, put them to the fire, because we can't just talk about what we want. We have to act. Everybody has to act. So I'm acting and I want you to act with me. So again, thank you so much. And we also want to know, if Measure E doesn't pass, then what? Is this our city manager's Hail Mary? Or what is Plan B? That's what I want to know. What is Plan B? What are they working on right now? And if it doesn't pass, and if other measures do, what are we looking at? You should wonder that too, because I want to know. Thank you very much, Daniel, again, and go Oxnard.
Thank you, Lucy, once again for joining me in this conversation. I appreciate all your insights, and I do appreciate your friendship and your kind words. Um, like I told you, if I was running, I hope you would have still ran. I'm not a scary person. I'm a nice person, but I do appreciate your words. I do appreciate your insights and sharing with us tonight. And again, for our viewers, if you want to learn more about Lucy Cartagena, please visit her website, lucycartagena.com. There you can go ahead and find out her priorities, read her full bio. I didn't read the full bio, I read a portion of it. Full bio and all her other amazing work that she has done over the years in the city of Oxnard. Lucy, again, thank you very much. I know you have your forum tonight with the League of Women Voters. Good luck, and best wishes on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Please be sure to join me tomorrow as we have another special edition of Oxnard Live. We'll be speaking with Mayor Pro Tem Carmen Ramirez, who is a candidate for the Ventura County Board of Supervisors, District Number 5, which encompasses a majority of the city of Oxnard. That will be starting at 6 p.m. right here on Oxnard Live. Again, this is Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real. Remember, please be sure to visit the websites of our two candidates that we interviewed tonight. Our first one was Ronald Lorejo. His website is Lorejo, the word for FOR, Oxnard.com. And our candidate that we just spoke with right now, Lucy Cartagena, you can visit her website at lucycartagena.com. She is a District 4 candidate and Ronald's a District 3 candidate. Remember, please be sure to join us tomorrow for a special edition of Oxnard Live with Mayor Pro Tem Carmen Ramirez at 6 p.m. Thank you all for joining me. And if you have any questions for the Mayor Pro Tem, please be sure to submit them at info at danielchavezjr.com or send a message through our Facebook page. Again, thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you to our guests, and good night.